Welcome to the Unapologetic with Janine McKinnon podcast, helping you step more fully into your feminine, unapologetic authenticity. I'm your host, Janine McKinnon, confidence and sexual empowerment coach, who went from the trenches of 2 kids under 2 years old, feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, disconnected, and resentful, to creating a life I'm obsessed with, full of passion, presence, pleasure, and playfulness. I love myself, I love my marriage, I love my kids, and I love my life. And I want to help you feel the same level of love and fulfillment in your life. Here you can find inspiration and tools taken from my one-on-one coaching sessions and group experiences to support you in your journey. We'll cover things like societal conditioning, inner child healing, women's empowerment, and tantric and Taoist principles to inspire you to live a life you love, while embodying your feminine, unapologetic authenticity. And in doing so, creating a ripple effect throughout your life, your family, and everyone you interact. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful we're able to connect in this way, and I can't wait to dig into the contents of this episode with you. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to our first Unapologetic Stories episode for this brand new segment for season 3. Today, I am so honored to be bringing on Lyon, who is a feminine coach and guide, and she is so much more than that. She, in speaking with her in this throughout this conversation, it just became so clear just how embodied she is in her wisdom, her spirituality, her femininity, and her leadership. Listening to her is just like this beautiful medicine to the soul, and we get into so many different things about divinity and spirituality and being able to really treat our body like a temple, begin to open ourselves up with our pineal gland and being able to connect with the divine, to be able to see through the matrix, to be able to break free from the shackles of people pleasing and really be able to unleash the wild woman who truly creates the change in humanity that is so, so needed. This is such an incredible conversation. I can't wait to bring you into things. And one thing I found really interesting about Nada is she also has had a near-death experience. So I have had one as well. Perhaps I will need to make space for its own episode and talking a little bit about that. But I just wanted to welcome Nada, and I was wondering if you would be open to expanding on your near-death experience a little bit more. And one thing I found really interesting about Nada is she has also had a near-death experience. So welcome, Nada. I was wondering if you would be open to expanding on that a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Every near-death experience is a life-changing course in every single way. So I was 14 years old and I used to live in Dubai, and we were sand duning, like in the desert. And we were all racing with one another. And we got into a car accident, and everything just happened so fast, but at the same time, everything happened so slowly. Do you know those moments where you're like, what's going on? But then everything's like zoned out with time. I found myself flying in the air, and I was so bubbly and I was so light. And I really liked where I was. It felt so loving. I couldn't understand what was going on after the car accident because I remember the crash. And then before I knew it, I was there floating. And then I look down and I see my body. And that's when I was like, oh, how come my body's on the floor and I'm here? My mind wasn't processing yet what was going on. Then
Mhm.
I saw, everybody crying over my body, the ambulance come, like put the electricity on me. Like I was like, wow, they're so like frustrated. I'm having the time of my life up here. I looked around me and I saw a lot of angels. I saw like the true reality where really everything is part of God and God is all and God has created all and everything is divinely perfect. And I was staying in that state. I didn't really want to come back because it was so beautiful. But I could also see how over Earth there was a lot of dark energy. Like there was a lot of like, we call them like demonic energies, right? And that's why I feel like humans kind of like forgot their divinity and forgot their true nature, which is perfection. Um, and then I looked down and I saw them carry my body and put me in the ambulance and they started going. And I was like, oh my God, I need to go back into my body. And then I just woke up in my body. So, and that was a very big pivotal point in my life because when I was 14, there was no Google, like there was no internet, there was no Yahoo. So I couldn't Google, like, what did I just experience? I experienced something magical. And obviously, the doctors told me that I just hid my head and had an imagination. But for me, it was so real. And that catalyzed my spiritual journey. That catalyzed me wanting to get answers and me wanting to know what was the etheric world, what was beyond the physical world. And from that moment, my full like third eye, you can say, has been open. Like since then, I speak to guides, I speak to angels. Like it's so easy for me because something opened when I left my body and came back in.
Wow. What a story. And just, it sounds, like you said, pivotal and so impactful and ethereal to really feel that full situation, to be able to see yourself and feel like it felt, with that bubbly and floating and having that consciousness while in that state. And then returning back to your body and to be just 14 at that stage, where it just really opened up everything for you and being able to communicate. Um, what was that like for you? Like you said, like there was no Google, there was no Yahoo. So this is quite the experience for a 14-year-old to go through. It sounds like doctors kind of brushed it off. How is your support system with really supporting you through that? Were they understanding? Did you have any guides or were you quite alone as you kind of began this path?
Yeah, like, I never really thought of it that way, but I never really spoke about it to many people because when I told the doctors, I was like, what happened? I was somewhere beautiful. There were a lot of my family members around, and I could see them all looking at me like, what? What's she talking about? Um, so I did keep it to myself for a while until I was 16, where I had another incident that also was like, oh my God, this is real. Because I was questioning myself, like, did I get it? Like, was it all mental or did it really happen? But it did open up my compassion massively. Like I've had a very rough childhood, and we all get on this healing journey to heal our childhood. But being in that state, feeling all the love that is available to us, it kind of like catalyzed my healing journey. And it shifted that for me. Like I became very compassionate and I could see people for who they really are. Like when somebody comes to me and they tell me like they have issues and they have problems, and I get that they do. But in my heart, I see their divine perfection
Mm.
because that's truly what they really are, right? And some of us just forget sometimes. So it's opened that up for me. When I was about 16 years old, I decided to go to my first healing course, right? And I was always drawn to the mystical world after that. I started getting books about psychic powers and books about like whatever was available, right? There wasn't that much available.
Yeah.
Like like I was like the woo-hoo person, right?
Mhm.
But then yeah, it just catalyzed everything for me.
Yeah, it sounds like it just opened things up and you were just wanting to take in whatever information you could, and that it really set you off on this trajectory, which is your dharma, your life's purpose, to really embody this and to be able to share that with others. It's really beautiful. I'm curious if there was a pivotal moment where you fully knew, rather than that questioning, was this real? to just that deep inner knowing of, yes, this was a real experience. This is real for me, and I'm pursuing this.
Yeah, that's when I was 16. So between 14 and 16, obviously, I'm exploring my teenage years,
Mhm,
and all my friends started dating guys, and I was such a deep person, but I also wanted to fit in, like I wanted to just be part of the, just
mhm,
belong to a crowd that I didn't really belong to, but my the part of me that yearned for a community was like, okay, I'm just going to put all these woo-woo things aside and just pretend that everything's normal, and
mhm,
just go on. And then when I was 16 years old, something really remarkable happened. I was swimming at night in the swimming pool outside my house, and I decided to just float. I was just floating, and I started looking at the stars, and I was stargazing, and I just started feeling like the magnificence of the universe again. And then
mhm,
I looked at a specific star, and then I felt like an immediate transmission go into my pineal gland, like go straight to my head. And then my consciousness like completely spread. And it's as if in that moment, I knew everything. Like I knew everything about human consciousness, about awakening consciousness, about cosmic consciousness, about godly consciousness. I could see my future. I could see my past. I realized there was no future and past. Everything's actually happening right now. All my past lives are happening right now. Like it was like a massive embedded awakening. And since that moment, yeah, like that was like, okay, it's solidified in my reality. And that's when I actually started taking clients because I started realizing like I could help people. So
mhm,
I started talking to my friends. I was like, listen, because people would naturally come to me with their problems, right?
mhm,
And I just knew how to help them intuitively because I could see beyond what they're sharing. Like people, like what they're sharing isn't really the depth of what's really going on a soul level. So it was very easy for me to like just tap into that and help people. And ever since then, just took on my journey.
mhm.
Yeah.
Wow, that just sounds so beautiful. I keep getting tingles as you're speaking, and I've heard different experiences like that, but generally, one's really coming to mind where it was through an ayahuasca journey, where she just
Mm,
had received this massive download and time and space collapsed and was able to see like past, future, presents. And for you, again, at such a young age, just floating there in the pool and to receive such a massive transmission. I'm wondering if you could expand a little bit more on what that transmission really was for those that are kind of newer, have some understanding, who are woo-woo curious, but perhaps haven't fully opened the doors, haven't fully received their transmissions yet. Would you like to share a little bit more about what that illuminated consciousness really is?
I want to create this analogy here, right? Imagine you have an ocean, and then this ocean has all these fish in it, right? But then inside the ocean, there's a little goldfish aquarium. But that goldfish aquarium isn't made out of glass. You know that sanded glass that they use in spas where you can't really see what's on the outside? So that aquarium is made out of that sanded glass.
Mhm,
So all the fish outside the aquarium can see the aquarium, but then the fish inside the aquarium can't see the ocean, right? And
mhm,
that's kind of like how we are on Earth. Earth is part of the multiverse. There are so many different beings out there. But because we have like a matrix, we have like a veil, our collective as a species is kind of like still waking up. They're still
mhm,
maturing on a soul level. So they can't really see what's going on outside. So when somebody receives a transmission or somebody receives an awakening or somebody like wakes up, from this sleeping world, it's kind of like a fish going to that sanded glass and like polishing it. And it's like, oh my God, there's so much more out there.
mhm,
There's so much more that meets the eye. So the transmission that people get or what I got, it could be from different fish. Like it could be from like a different part of me in the universe, waking this part of me up
mhm,
because all the different beings out there are just versions of us, right? Kind of like your higher self is a version of you, just in a different timeline. So when a transmission comes in, basically it's a stream of coding, a stream of information that's done through light. It goes into a person's pineal gland. Our pineal gland is the master cell of our body, right? And when it receives one type of information, whether it's galactic, universal, or anything, it kind of talks to all the other cells in your body, because our DNA is kind of like a book. So if someone is not awake yet, right? They're just looking at the cover of the book and reading the back. It's like, oh, okay, I get what the book is all about. I get what life is all about. But then as people start to activate, and people don't need to get transmissions from the universe to activate or from guides, they can just activate themselves, right? We're very powerful beings. It's kind of like you open that book and you start reading the chapters and you start to really have the depth of who you are as a being and what your abilities are and what your skills are, what you came here to do, and the fullness of your soul evolution.
I love those metaphors. I think that really helps get that good picture and idea of what it is you're speaking about. And I can relate to the fishbowl
Mhm.
and how that was for me. And I grew up with no religion, no spirituality, no exposure to that whatsoever. And I, for a long time, considered myself a spiritual atheist in a way that I understood a connection through energy and nature, but like didn't
Mm.
really know what that was. And spent some time with that woo woo curious, reading the books, doing the things. And it was like one little thing after another that frosted glass be kind of opened up so I could see something else, and it would be in different ways. It might be something more small, or it could be this impactful experience or something I was able to witness, and it just opens it up a little bit more, kind of reading another paragraph or another chapter in that book, in that story. I'm curious. I think we hear a lot about pineal glands and how it really is this big transmission point for ourselves. It's how we receive and interact with the universe. And I hear a lot about how it's quite calcified and it can be a challenge to activate. You touched on activating it a little bit. Are you open to expanding on that and how we can activate our pineal glands?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we're not separated from the earth. Like, we're part of the earth. Like, we're like trees that have legs, right? Like, we can walk around, but we're part of this earth ecosystem. And the earth is part of the universe, right? And in every planet or every system out there, there is also life. And those things, or I'm going to call them aliens, or those beings that live, and aliens could be angels too, right? Because angels are, non-human figures. So, they're also part of their system, right? Now, on an energetic level, we're all connected in a web, right? So, if we want to experience that, we got to activate our DNA and our light body. So, our light body, so I talked about the DNA, which is the book,
Mhm.
but then our light body is what connects us to the multiverse. And most people have a light body that's switched off. It's kind of like you walk into a room, you can't really see what's going on until you turn on the light.
Mhm.
So our whole body is a few things that go together. The first part of it is your nervous system, because your nervous system is how you receive communication from the outer world. Like you can, translate what you hear from people, what you see, what you smell. And the same thing will happen energetically. So if you want to talk to angels, you want to talk to different beings, your nervous system needs to have that bandwidth so you can access that frequency. That
Mhm.
your nervous system is connected to your pineal gland. And your pineal gland is kind of like your antenna. It's like a little antenna on your head. It's like literally like if I put my finger here, it's where that touches. And that antenna is what connects you to the universe and opens up your psychic abilities. So if you have people that can see energy, some people just have an inner knowing, some people can smell or taste energy, some people just feel gut feelings. And people just, have different ones that are active, and some people have some that are dormant, but ultimately you can have them all active, and that's all stored in the pineal gland. So
Mhm.
you can activate your pineal gland in so many ways. What I found worked best for me is to first prioritize my nervous system, because the pineal gland and the nervous system go hand in hand together. And if you look at our everyday life, everything is kind of designed to create disharmony in the nervous system.
Mhm.
Like the type of music that we listen to, the shows on Netflix, just the everyday life, the hustle and the bustle, and even the lighting that we have. I know right now we're on a podcast, we have like ring lights, but that light is going to disturb the nervous system. So what I found works best for me is to first make sure that I drink very clean water, like very clean water, because your nervous system is electricity. So the better quality water you have, the more it's going to switch on. The next thing that I do is every single day, like few minutes, I bring in like diamond light from the universe, and I kind of like infuse my nervous system as if like you're filling up a water with a waterfall, right? You're just filling it up. So what I'm doing with my intention with that is to increase the bandwidth. So imagine your nervous system is like a little tube. What I'm doing intentionally is I'm bringing in that light, and then I'm opening up that tube so I can have a more expanded awareness, right? But then lifestyle plays a huge role with that. So obviously, the basics like get out of fluoride. Anything that has fluoride, don't put it in your body, whether it's food, water, toothpaste, whatever it may be. Also, your endocrine system is so important. So anything that has chemicals, like I don't clean my clothes with the regular laundry detergent. I don't even shower with like commercial shampoo and stuff. It's all like completely like chemical free because, our endocrine system is very important. Um, Meditation, so important too. So you want to put them all together. So basically you want to cultivate like a lifestyle that is kind of disconnected from the matrix, I would call it, and more aligned to the organic earth. Because the more we tune ourselves into the organic earth, the more we're going to go back into our natural nature, which is part of the whole.
Yeah, it sounds like just really stripping away all of these layers that have been placed on us by
Absolutely.
modern society so we can return to the wisdom of the earth, the wisdom of our bodies, our natural way of being.
I love how diplomatic you are with modern society. I'm like, for me, I like the matrix and the organic earth, and you're like, yeah, but it's true, it's modern society. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is the matrix, right? Like all of these things are, I think, placed. Like the fact that we have so many different products and all of the marketing behind these products that just pump chemicals in our body. And here in the Western world, same with the food and how it is just all over the stores. Like, why is there a health aisle? Like, shouldn't all of our food be nourishing for our bodies? Like, what is the rest of the stuff that's here?
Yeah, that's very important. I love that you brought that up. Like food is so important. Anything that is GMO, anything that has pesticides, anything that has even in the meats, right? Like hormones and vaccinations. And there's a lot. Like I went down that rabbit hole and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna grow my own farm. It gets that much because everything's got stuff in it. But the cleaner, I wouldn't say like, go extreme because you still want to live your life, but I would have like a 95-5 rule. Like 95% of my food would be very clean, like completely organic, nothing that's been sprayed. And then the 5% I'll give myself, some flexibility, like when I go out with my friends and stuff. But even then I'll choose the healthiest option. But food is so important because your gut is your brain, right? Like your brain is your second brain. Your gut is your first brain. And if you look at, I love that because if you look at the way the gut looks, it actually looks like the brain. It's made out of the same material. They look exactly the same, just one's in your stomach, one's in your head. But your gut is where all the chemicals start. It's not in the brain. Like people think that, serotonin, dopamine, all that starts in the head. It actually starts in the gut. So yeah, food's so important.
It really is, and I didn't know that in terms of what the gut looked like. I'm gonna look that up after this and really see that visual, but I believe I heard recently how the gut actually sends out more signals to your body than your brain does. I can't remember the exact specifics, but I was just blown away by how much the gut actually transmits throughout our body, and it is that place of how we are transmuting what we are eating and how our body then uses it and what different hormones and chemicals and all those different things become in our body and interact. And I have gone down that rabbit hole. Like I am so with you in terms of the chemicals and our food and all the things. And I like that you said that 95-5 rule because striving for perfection only sets us up for disappointment, I think, because like we need some wiggle room. Different things are going to come up. Like we are still in the matrix, we are still in modern society. Like these different things are going to come up. And also for people that are more in those beginning stages, I think starting small, one thing after the other after the other. Like for me, it was probably 15 plus years ago now where I really started this. And it was okay, let's strip out the chemicals in my makeup and my face products because that's what I'm putting on every day. And then it was slowly one more thing, one more thing, one more thing. And this past year, we finally got rid of all nonstick and all Teflon from our home. There's none of that. We have the local island farm raised meats. We're not buying it from
Nice.
the stores anymore. Water is one thing though for us, and we are really lucky where we live here in BC, Canada, that our water is quite clean, but there is chlorine in it. And
Mm,
as you spoke, thinking or talking about how we're electric beings, something pinged in how water conducts electricity. And so it
absolutely.
makes so much sense to have that water being so pure and so clean so we can really transmit our electric signals that much more.
Yeah, yeah, that's so important. And like you what you said is so important. Like it's progress. Like don't aim for perfection, right? But you want to walk in that direction. I would say like every month do add one thing for your mind, body, and soul, right? So for people that are like just starting out and they want to get all this in place, start by meditating 5 minutes a day. And then
Mhm,
at night, infuse your nervous system with light. Do a little gratitude prayer before you sleep, infuse your nervous system with light. Gratitude keeps you heart centered. And when you're heart centered, you can connect more to your soul. So you can start with that and then just remove the like the fluoride toothpaste from your life. Like that's one of the biggest things that calcifies the pineal gland.
mhm,
Like small steps, will kind of like that's how people climb mountains, right? You don't just jump to the top.
mhm,
So yeah, just take small steps, but walk in that direction. And because the truth is like everybody is so beautiful and everybody is so divine and everybody has such, and I'm sure everybody watching this knows deep down inside that there's something special about them. They just don't know what it is. And or some people are yet to discover. But like that special thing about you is that divine perfection. So, like I would suggest and I would invite everybody to, give themselves the gift of exploring more of what their soul is. Because society or modern society, is very fear-based, it's very lack-based, it's very disconnect based, and we can get sucked into it very easily. So then all the nervous system gets wired differently and stuff. But if we do these practices day in day out, then we'll stay in alignment even though the chaos is happening or even though there's so much taking place in our reality. We can be living in a higher frequency so we can see, know, and live in the truth.
mhm. Absolutely. I'm glad you circled back to really cementing in that meditation and the nervous system regulation because we can't be open to everything that's available to us if we're stuck on our fight or flight nervous
Uh,
system response and we're so closed off and it's throwing off our hormones and everything like that. And really coming into alignment with exploring our soul's purpose, as you said, we need stillness and quietness to be able
mm,
to explore that.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, because yeah, so much is just geared towards throwing us off of that. So I'm curious, with everyone that you have worked with, have you seen common threads in terms of what is holding people back from being able to access their soul's purpose, this connection with the universe?
There is a common theme, and I would say there's three things. The first thing is the attachment to the story. Like everybody has had a rough life. And this is not to undermine anyone's reality. Like I've had a crazy childhood, right? And we all have. Everyone has their own, uh, let's say, setup. Because when we come in as souls, when you're playing a video game before you start the game, you kind of like choose what you're going to look like, right?
Mhm.
And then you're going to choose like the setup where you're going to play that game. Oh, I'm going to play in an icy place, or oh, I'm going to play this game in like, ancient Egypt or whatever. So before our souls come here, that's what we did. It's like, oh, so I'm going to be a woman, and then I'm going to be blonde, and then I'm going to live with this family, and then I'm going to choose this background. So that's where people are Indian or African or Arab or, Canadian or French. Right? They choose their background. And what are the skill levels that I want to get into this game?
Mhm.
So that's when we choose our life story, right? So the abuse or the disrespect or the unworthiness that we pick up as children, that's like are the expert level we are choosing. Some people are playing beginners level, some people are playing intermediate, some people are playing expert, but we're all playing the same game, right? And it doesn't matter who's playing intermediate, expert, and beginner, because on a soul level, we're all the same. There is no beginner and intermediate and expert.
Mhm.
So the first thing I realized is when people start their journey, they can't let go of their story, because their story has identified them, the story of pain, the story of struggle, the story of whatever it is that they've gone through. And I noticed this a lot with the spiritual path as well. Like there's a lot, because I've lived all over the place. Like I lived in Hawaii, I've lived in Bali. So I integrated with so many spiritual communities. They love the story. They just love the story. They make it their identity. But how can you ever evolve if you can't look at the story as just a story? It's
Mhm.
part of your timeline. It doesn't identify who you are. It doesn't identify what you're capable of. And it doesn't have to hold you back.
Mhm.
Because even though a lot of people like go through, some people go through healings for years and they don't shift. And some people shift in a week. The difference is that one, the first one that doesn't shift, is so holding on to their story. They can't let go of that. But then the one that shifts so quickly is because they're ready for the new version of themselves. They're ready to become the favorite version of themselves. They're ready to drop the story. So I would say it's so important to look at your story as a story.
Mhm.
Yes, some people have experienced pain. Yes, some people have experienced trauma. Yes, and that must have been not easy. But
Mhm.
when we look at it like this is a story, now then you can tackle it from a different level of consciousness, as opposed to like relive it and re-solidify it in your cellular memory and your nervous system. That's the first thing. The second thing is I realized that what keeps people from, like, what is the healing journey all about? We're all healing for our worth, because if we want to speak up, why don't people speak up? Because they don't feel worthy. If we want to make more abundance, why don't people make more abundance? Because they don't feel worthy. If you want to attract the right partner, why don't you attract the right like everything goes back to worthiness. How worthy do you feel, right?
Mhm.
But I'm going to tell you honest truth here. Like there's two types of worth. There is the egotistic worth, where you need to validate yourself and validate your worth. So then you matter enough to bring in the partner, the money, the soul clients, feel good about yourself, whatever it may be. But that ego worth is kind of like the donkey with the carrot, because the ego will always find something new. you know there's something new for you to heal, there's something new for you to shift. But there's something called the sacred worth. Because when you remember in your system, and this is what I help people with, like when you remember in your system that you're part of God, like what more worth do you need? Like when you remember your sacred worth, then all those little, again, they're stories, right? They're real until they're not real, right?
Mhm.
So what I do is I help people shift from their story to their sacred worth. It's so important, because when you know your sacred worth, nothing can take that away from you, ever. And like whatever happens in your reality, you know who you are, you know where you come from, you know what you're capable of, and you know what's possible for you, and that's limitless. And it's not a belief. It's not like, oh, I believe this. It's like it's an inner knowing that makes you unstoppable. So that would be like the second thing. Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much in that, and
That's
I'm glad you touched on each of those and really gave them time and space, because with that story, I've seen that as well, is where people just they become the story, and there's so much power to becoming unattached from it, and like, yes, it's a story, yes, it's something you experienced, but it's not you. And there's
Mm,
so much power in being able to release that and to choose and to bring intention into where you want to go. And also, I'm so glad you brought that highlight of that different sides of the coin of worthiness. And there's that
mm,
egotistical worthiness. And I see that so much with women, especially, and it's women who I work with in the people pleasing and being the
mm.
good girl and living up to expectations and ticking the boxes and doing the things that they should. And so much of that is that egotistical worth because that's where they find validation and love and belonging from achieving those things. And the thing with that side of the coin is often ticking those boxes, doing those things, like it doesn't give you that real fulfilling sense of accomplishment or love or whatever you think it's going to. But when you're able to tap into that, you called it sacred worthiness, where we are sacred beings of God. Like we don't need any more than that. And I think there's so much power in being able to make that shift, as you said, and just that inner knowing of, yes, we are worthy just because we are. We don't need any other reason.
Yeah, and we're so worthy. Like I sometimes tell people, like if you can see how divine you are, you would bow down to your own feet. Like we are so divine. But to touch on this good girl syndrome, because I actually had it and I had to heal it myself, right? And I work with a lot of women that have it too. And if there are any women listening and have this good girl syndrome, I want to let you know by you by you forcing yourself or you suppressing yourself to have that good girl syndrome so you can be accepted, so you can be validated, so you can be chosen, so you can be desired, so you can be celebrated. You're kind of betraying yourself too, because your natural state, you're good, but your natural state is wild. Like your natural state is wild, it's blunt, there's so much truth, there's so much wisdom. And it is women, specifically women, that will change the course of humanity. And I'm talking humanity here, right? Because women have something that is very fierce inside them. And when that wakes up, they become unstoppable with their life purpose, with how they treat people. They have a hunger to kind of make the world a better place. So they will not welcome men to be out of alignment whatsoever. They will enforce that alignment with their presence without even having to say anything. They will raise conscious children, the new generation, right? Because when a woman is in that good girl syndrome, she kind of holds herself back from her own power, from her own voice, from her own capabilities. And I get it because I used to have it, right? I just wanted someone to love me. And I put on that mask and it was very real. But my God, giving myself the permission to be me and have standards really changed so many things about, first of all, who's in my life and who isn't, but also what I am capable of. And, the momentum I have because, I allowed myself to be me. And this is my invitation for all women.
Ah, yes, yes, yes. I liked at the beginning how you use that word betrayed and how when we are doing this good girl syndrome, we are betraying ourselves. Like it really is that serious, that heavy, what
Yeah.
we are doing to ourselves. And that when we can choose to let go of that, take a stand to not fucking do that anymore and to choose another path, it really creates that ripple effect, like you touched on. Like it starts with us, how we heal, how we embody ourselves. And then that creates a standard, sets a standard for those people we interact with. It lifts our partners up with us as well. As you said, we raise conscious children, and that's how we change humanity, how we create that ripple effect throughout the collective. And it's magical and powerful, and that is the power we have as women.
Women are so powerful. Like women are priestesses. They've got so much capacity within them. And the good girl syndrome keeps them just at one part of who they are, right? When they drop that and they unleash themselves, then they can become the fullness of who they were actually born to be.
Yes. And I think
And
so
I love
much of
it. I just want to tap into that because I love that you get it. I love that you get it because when I say this is a form of betrayal, there's a lot of people looking like you're exaggerating. No, this is the worst type of betrayal, right? So yes, like yeah, like real self-love is allowing yourself to be you.
It really is. And I think a lot of this conversation, like it's that big picture thinking, like it is that
Yeah.
ripple effect, is how we're changing humanity. Could you perhaps provide some real tangible examples of what you've noticed, whether in yourself or with clients you've worked with, and how it really has impacted their life to stop with the betrayal, to embrace self love, and really bring that embodiment in?
Yeah, absolutely. Like when it comes to suppression, so good girl syndrome is part of suppression, right? The reason why people suppress themselves or they keep themselves suppressed is because they want to be loved. They want to keep the peace, you know. They don't want to be the problem. They don't want to be too much. And I noticed from the women that I work with, they do it mainly for their partners, like you know, they don't want to upset their partners, or they do it for their communities, like the teachers in school or you know, the neighbors, etc, or they do it because that's how their families see them,
Mhm.
and so they keep on this identity. But these women are depressed, like these women are not happy, these women are doing their best to get by in life, but deep down inside there's a massive empty hole, right?
Mhm.
So I feel like the first thing a woman should do if she wants to let go of this is just start knowing what her standards are, because a good girl syndrome doesn't know what her standards are. Like, what are your standards in life? What do you accept and what do you not accept? What would like what virtues do you really welcome into your reality? You don't need to take action. You don't need to say anything to anybody yet, but just identify them. Like, what are your standards? Who are you and what do you live by? And then once you identify your standards, it's very easy for you to just start saying yes and no to things. The good girl syndrome is a person that wants to be of service to everybody. She just wants everybody to be happy. So she's kind of like mothering everybody, right? But she's depleting herself because she's not mothering or she's not being of service to others from a fulfilled place. She's doing it from a place of emptiness. And the highest service a woman can do on the planet is service to herself.
Mhm.
So serving yourself, respecting your own standards, respecting your own boundaries, and saying yes and no according to that, and trusting that whatever wants to take place, let it take place. But you're making that decision that I will not betray myself anymore. So, you know, people are afraid that their partner might get upset. Let him get upset. It's okay if he gets upset. You know, I was sitting on the beach once when I was healing my good girl syndrome. And it was really cute because I turned to my right and I saw an angel next to me, and it was Archangel Gabriel. And I want to share the story. So I looked at Archangel Gabriel and he said to me, like, why are you so consumed? And I said to him, you know, people get really upset with me when I speak up, and you know, if I share my truth, I'm too much for everybody. And I was like living in that helpless, hopeless state, right? And he looked at me and he said, interesting. And he said, let me ask you something. What does it mean when you trigger someone? I said, you know, if someone's getting triggered, it means stuff is coming up for them to heal. He's like, yeah. So basically, whether you spoke or not, that stuff is there. You're just stirring the mud to come to the surface. I was like, true. He's like, so by you speaking your truth and you being yourself, triggering people, aren't you also doing them a service for them to start going to alignment and healing themselves? And I was like, yes. And that really helped me because I never saw it from that perspective. So knowing your standards, but also letting everybody have their reality, knowing you're not responsible for people's emotions, right? Like their emotions are their emotions. You're just bringing them up to the surface if they get upset. And if they're not upset, then their emotions are their emotions too. Like don't make other people's stories your story,
Yes, what a great perspective. Because I think that's
right?
something that holds so many people back, is just the fear of the reactions they get from using their voice, of holding their truth. And when you frame it that way, like it is a service. that we get to provide to those around us. And it's an honorable service. And we reap so many benefits of that as well in really staying in alignment with what is true for us. And I also really like that you started with these standards
Mm.
because I think that's something so much of us, we just go along with life and we don't necessarily bring that attention and that awareness to what is truly, truly important to us, what really matters. And where your attention goes, your energy flows. And when you take that time and space to really look at your standards and your values, and I think it's important to note too, we have these for ourselves. We can have these in our relationships, within our family, within our business, and they can have slightly different flavors. But taking those times to really bring that awareness to it, like set it in stone, write it on paper, even like I've done that, is that it really creates this almost seriousness to it, although like there can be playfulness, but it helps you have that point where you can judge that yes or no. Like you said, you have something to base things off of now instead of just going with it and then wishing you didn't and feeling the guilt and all those different things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like I do the same. We have like family meetings where we write down our standards every year for the year to come, and then we review them. And I think this is so healthy. And have different standards for like your love life, for your family, for your business, for your clients. Because like what are we when we heal, we're healing a lot of anger, right? We all have anger, we all have unworthiness that we're trying to heal. Not all of us, but some people. But what is anger? Anger is just an indicator your standards are being disrespected. So people get angry. So if you know your standards and you respect your own standards, and then if people come into your life and they respect your standards, that's wonderful. But if they don't respect your standards, then you voice that out, then you don't need to react. You don't need to get angry, right? Um, and you don't need to fight with people that don't respect your standards either. You can simply give them a choice. Like what I teach my clients is simply like whether it's your husband, your best friend, your mother, or the stranger on the street or the woman in the supermarket. Like it's the same thing. Just be like, hey, I kind of like you. I want to hang out with you. We can have something great together, right? But I have a very high standard of respect in my life, or I have a very high standard of trust in my life, or honesty, or integrity, or whatever your standard is. Your standard is your standard, right? Like maybe some people have a high standard of punctuality. I don't, but maybe some people do, right? But so I really have a high standard of punctuality, and it matters a lot to me that you're punctual when you're in my presence. So if you want to be in my life, can you please respect that standard? And they can make a choice. If you're valuable to them, they can make that choice and respect your standard. And if they're not going to make that choice, then you're like actually seeing people's true colors, and it's such a beautiful blessing.
Yeah, it really comes back down to how you're able to serve through your standards and your boundaries and communicate that. And then the ball's in their court. It's up to them. We can't control them, but we can control our reality and the way we interact with our relationships. And I'm also glad you brought up anger because I find that's a conversation I've been having a lot lately. We are coming up to time, but I would just love it if you could expand a little bit more on that in anger and how there really is this purpose to it and this passion to it.
Yeah, like, every emotion is talking to us. Like every emotion is telling us something. So anxiety, depression, anger, like all these negative emotions that people don't want to feel, but they're actually giving you a compass of what to do with your life. So anger specifically is the same. It's like every coin has two sides, and anger is on the same coin of passion. So if people aren't living a passionate life, a fulfilled life, they're going to bottle up so much anger. And a fulfilled life is a life where there's standards, where you're respected, where you're walking and talking your path, whatever is unique to you, whether you're working in accounting or you're farming. But like being so honest with yourself and walking that path, there's no reason for you to be angry, right? Because anger is telling you, hey, you're empty from the inside, so I'm going to fill you up. But if somebody uses that anger and it will just transform into passion when they walk their authentic life. And a lot of people are afraid. They're afraid to walk their authentic life. Like everything we talked about is beautiful. And I know you're applying it in your life. And we didn't get to talk about your boat story. And I know I'm applying it in my life. But I know for a lot of people, they'll be like, okay, that's a beautiful story. But like, what if? And what if? I want to just share one last thing. Okay. Your life is your life. Like these are your rules. Like imagine somebody came up to you, like a magician came up to you and gave you a seed and put it in your hand and told you this seed is going to create the most magical tree in the world. No one's ever seen this tree before. And it's going to have so many unique fruits. And this is the secret. It's with you and gives it to you in your hand. But then you never plant it, then the whole world will never get to see this magical tree, and generations and generations and generations will pass and no one will ever know about that tree. And that seed is every person on the planet. There is uniqueness, there is magic, there is so many possibilities that people can achieve, but then they let fear stop them. So what I do is I always ask myself, like, how do I want to die? And I know it's extreme, I'm a dramatic person, okay, you can see I'm very, but like, how do you want to die? Like, do you want to be on your deathbed saying, I did everything right to please everyone around me? Or do you want to say, and I was empty and unfulfilled? You'll be like, I lived my life to my fullest capacity. I planted that seed, that tree grew, everyone tasted its fruits, and I became me, you know? Because I watched this video about people on their deathbed. I think there was like 17 really old people on their deathbed. It really inspired me because they all said the same thing. It's like if there's one thing they could change in their life is live it for themselves and not for others.
Yeah, such wise words, is to just really embrace life for us because that's what our life is, right? Like that is what it is. Simple. And that story with the tree, it again really shows how we're betraying ourselves when we're keeping it inside, when we're not planting that tree. And it also shows how us living our soul's purpose and the fruits this tree is able to grow again serves and is able to create that connection and help others through us just really being in alignment. So, so beautiful, so powerful. There's been so many golden nuggets throughout this conversation. Thank you. I'm wondering if there is, again, you've given so many great advice and perspectives so far, but is there anything else you would like to add or to say to women on their journey of really embodying their unapologetic truth, their essence, their soul purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, by the way. I really enjoyed our talk. Um, the universe wants women to win, wants men to win too, wants children, wants everybody to win. But the universe wants you to win. Like a lot of women, they're just waiting for something, like a sign or whatever. But the universe wants you to win. Like the universe will make sure that you win at life
Mm.
if you say yes to yourself. And that condition is if you say yes to yourself, is only because the universe is waiting for you to realize, is waiting for you to plant your own seed. So, what I would leave you with is choose yourself and you will always win at life.
Mm. Once again, I'm just like, yes. And it's just God and the universe is on your side, and it's
100%.
up to you. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I've also absolutely loved this conversation. And for everyone listening, because you're amazing and they're going to want to hear more from you, where can they find you? What do you have going on? Can you please let them know?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on divinegreatspirit.com. And once you get into the website, it will take you to everything that I have to offer. Like I have my podcast, I have my Instagram, I have so many free events that are going on, I have so many courses. So once you go in, find your way and take what you need so you can grow and evolve. So it's divinegreatspirit.com.
Great. Nice and simple. You know where to go. We'll include the link in the show notes and just see where your soul guides you.
Absolutely.
So thank you again. This has been such a pleasure.
Same here.
Thank you for joining us inside the Unapologetic with Janine McKinnon podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you feel called, I would so appreciate it if you shared about this episode in your stories or left us a review to help us reach more women in their unapologetic authenticity journey. Until next time, trust your inner wisdom and make some magic.